What is this lunch I'm supposed to get?
Difficult. There you go, I'm going back down now. Good. They'll probably fit. What a CM.
Okay, I'll pop this open now.
Okay, we will reconvene. Okay, so it's my happy job to tell you a little bit about training. I'm going to split what I want to say into two parts. What I consider to be the dull part, and hopefully you're going to go.
I am going to go. I'm going to grab a coffee for
It's so much big relief to me that Roy's about to leave, because now I can tell you what the second half. Well, I can do the second half of my talk. Don't lie. I will wait till he's gone before I say that. You'll notice, if you're keen on looking at the time, that I have about 3 minutes to tell you about training, which is probably all I need, so that's okay. Actually, David and I will split the time, not equitably, but we'll do our best to make sure we get back on track.
We're leaving that open for the...
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. We're letting the hot
So,
air out.
the dull part, let's deal with that first. Because my guess is that at this stage already, we are on day 2, but it's still morning, we're pretty saturated with information. Okay? And as Alistair keeps telling us, is Alistair still here? No? Everything's in the handbook, so why would I want to troll through the bits that are in the handbook for you? So, let's be very quick. Let's see if this works. Yes, so there's lots of stuff in the training in terms of modules, activities and so forth. I'll mention just a couple of those that are rather different and then skip to what I want to say in a moment. So the things that we've looked at before that, research methodology, how to do research, tricky one. You'll only know which bits out of that are going to be really valuable to you by a combination of doing it and then trying to see how that meshes with how you do stuff already, how you might try and better do stuff. I'll come back to better in a moment. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about the 6-month training project, so I won't worry about that one. There are some technical specific things that we're going to do. So some stuff to look at fabrication techniques, which many of you will need. Some stuff to look at how magnetic materials work, what the state of the art is there. I'll be working with you on a couple of days for a kind of workshop-based thing to do with plasmonics. We've got some stuff from people in industry to look at sensing and security. There's a whole load of stuff here. You'll discover some stuff later in this week that's probably not something you've come across before. This one at the top, cognitive behavioral coaching. Don't worry about the terminology. You'll find out more about that later. I think that's going to be a bit of fun. Blah, 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 blah. Creativity event, I'll just highlight that's Friday afternoon. We've saved the best till last. That should be a bit of fun too. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, not to worry. See, this is why Roy wouldn't be happy as director if I just say it's all blah, blah, blah. After all of the time and effort we put, it doesn't matter. Health and safety, it's just blah, blah, blah. Very important blah, blah, blah. Right? It is. You know, if you want to go and do an experiment at cryogenic temperatures, you better make darn sure that you've got the procedure for it figured out. Or not only might you harm yourself or somebody else, you might crash your experiment. Serious stuff. Okay, so we need to cover a whole load of these things. There's a whole load of other technical stuff that we can look at there. That's all good stuff. Ian, who you'll now know intimately, you've seen so much of him already, and by the end of this week you'll probably be bored of him. We'll be doing a whole load of stuff to do with the different kind of computational things that you or I might need. whether it's to try and analyse experimental data, it's to control experimental equipment, it's to model some theory that you've been working on, whatever it might be. And that's all in year 1, all right? And then there's year 2, 3 and 4. And I decided not to put all of the stuff to do with year 2, 3 and 4 up. Instead, that's me done on the formal side, so that's less than 3 minutes. So what's my next slide? It's what's the point? All right. So rather than discuss the details, I wanted to instead spend a little bit of time thinking about why we're doing all this stuff. Okay? Because you're all smart people, and you want to know, okay, if I'm going to be doing something, yeah, why am I doing that? What's the value? Why might I want to do it even though it doesn't immediately look like it's interesting? Where can I see that might fit in with me? One could come up with many different reasons. I'm going to give you just one for now. And the point is, and this was the point for me, it's to help you develop your curiosity. I'm going to make use of 3 quotations from a dusty old book from the library called Physics and Beyond, Memories of a Life in Science by Werner Heisenberg. I'll explain why. Because somebody like Heisenberg, who's did so much in physics in such a short space of time, then reflecting back on how things had happened to him, how his life had gone and so forth, wrote an incredibly interesting story, really, about what it is to do science. And I thought that would make a good basis for discussing 1 or 2 things that I wanted to talk about. One of the things that you'll know, but it's worth reminding ourselves about, that Heisenberg mentions, is that science rests on experiments. And I don't just mean a lab experiment where you've got some kind of piece of equipment hooked up to a sample and you're going to find out, well, what kind of current flows if I apply what kind of voltage. An experiment could be just about anything. You could be thinking, okay, I have some idea about how something works, let's write a computational model. Your experiment could be, okay, I actually think that it's going to work in the following fashion. Let's go and dredge through the literature and find out what different people have done and see if we can tell from that what it might be. So to do those things, no matter whether they're experimental, theoretical, computational, whatever, one needs technical skills. You need to be able to analyze data. You need to understand how to do numerical calculations, etc., etc., etc. So part of the rationale for doing the training is there are a whole load of things that you need to be able to do in order to get to the interesting stuff. Yeah? So if you were to travel to Finland and you really wanted to understand Finnish culture, you couldn't do it without learning the language Finnish. It won't work. Likewise, we need to get to grips with the language of doing science, and there's a whole variety of different things. So that's one kind of area. It's very personal. Okay, that's something that you and I each need to do. We need to become better at lots of these different things. Here's something that's not so personal. Another quotation from Heisenberg: science is rooted in conversations. And you know that already, because if you want to try and find out what you know, the best way to do it is to try and tell somebody else or explain to somebody else what it is that you think you know. And you will find out very quickly which bit you do not know. Okay? There's a very, very, very important underlying message here. If you want to understand something better, you have to figure out where it is your understanding, as it might be at any stage, fails. What don't you know? And you and I suspect, are both guilty of imagining that we understand something, when we don't. We don't really know that we don't until we try and explain and convince somebody else that we do. And at that point, we can find out what's going on. So getting better at that, understanding how we can quickly exchange information with other people in an effective way so that we can learn, they can learn, we need to understand how better to exchange ideas. We need to understand better how to come up with ideas. Right? It's not magic, as you'll find out later this week when Dennis Sherwood comes to do our creativity event on Friday afternoon. There are ways we can help ourselves do that kind of stuff. So we're going to not just say, okay, this is training because we're all together in some big new super centre, that's fabulous. We're going to actually need to think a little bit more carefully than that. How do we best learn from each other? Okay? And it's an experiment. We're all part of a big experiment. You are, I am. Right? We haven't done it this way before, so it should be a bit of fun. What else have I got in here? It's my last slide. Okay, it's just another thought from me. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt up here. It doesn't hurt up here at some point. You didn't push yourself far enough. Again, you know this already, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. But it's just to remind you that that's the point you need to be at. Totally stuck trying to get things sorted out. And you'll go through cycles of thinking you understand something, then not. I've been through many such cycles. I think I understand something, and then it's very clear that I don't. And how am I? What phase of the cycle am I in at the moment? Almost complete lack of understanding about just about everything. I need you people to come back and remind me that actually I know a few little things, and together hopefully we can build a better and a stronger picture. Okay, so it's my little homily, if you like, today about why we're doing the training. To try and give ourselves the toolkit to be better at what we do, and to help each other to be better at what we do. Now, there's a more formal side to all of this, in the sense that all of these different training activities, we need to keep on top of them. We need to know who's doing what and so forth, and David's going to tell you a little bit about how that whole process works. So I think if I hit down arrow, bingo.
Okay.
Over to you, David.
Thank you, Bill. Fortunately, I don't have any quotes from great scientists about monitoring and assessment.
Not surprising.
Not surprisingly. Yes, so unfortunately it's fallen to me in terms of responsibility to look after the monitoring and assessment side of the various activities that you'll undergo as part of the CDT. So why bother to monitor and assess people? Well, we don't do it for fun. I mean, I've been in academia for 30 years now, and marking reports is not the thing I look forward to most in my working life, I have to say. We do it because we want you to be successful in terms of obtaining your PhD and getting as much as you possibly can from the training activities that Bill's already mentioned. We want you to finish on time. Going back to when I did my PhD, there were people in the lab who I thought were retired, but actually they were still trying to finish the PhD. It used to drag on sometimes forever and ever. These days we do try and finish much more promptly, and if you finish promptly you can move on to the next stage of your career more quickly. So we want you to finish on time. We want to launch you into a successful and enjoyable career. People such as myself, and I'm sure Bill, we've had an enjoyable, and still are having, I'm not that old yet, an enjoyable and successful career. We want you to do the same in whichever field you end up working. So to achieve those objectives, you and we need to know how you're progressing, both in terms of the PhD and research project and in terms of the training activities. So we do need some kind of monitoring and assessment. And assessment is not just there for giving a grade. The main point of the assessment is the feedback that comes with the grade, how you can improve all the time. We want to say in all of the activities, such as report writing, writing journal papers, making presentations, how you can do it better. As Bill said, we're all learning all the time. We all try to improve all the time. Some people manage it, some don't, but that's what we want you to do, and that's why we're doing it. So we've got a range of different kind of assessment and monitoring activities. We've already mentioned some of the online things like MyPGR, which is really just monitoring your contacts with your supervisors and your mentors, for example, and so that everyone knows what it is you agreed you should do next, basically. Some of the modules that are the modules that are credit weighted that Bill mentioned, they have their own module assessments. You've all studied at undergraduate level, so you know what kind of assessments you have in modules. Research assessments, how do we monitor research? Well, a big assessment stage is monitoring the 6-month mini project, which you're all going to begin next week, and I'll say a little bit more about that in detail later. We'll be asking you to make oral presentations. It's important in all walks of professional life to be able to stand up and make a presentation, be it at a conference if you're an academic or an industrial scientist. be it in a project progress meeting internally in a company, if you're working in a company in research and development, or any really business and commercial environment. We'll use independent assessors. Sometimes supervisors are too closely linked to a project to give an objective assessment of progress. They may err on the side of, yes, everything's going great when it's not, or they may be overly critical and be expecting the student to achieve really too much for the time and effort that the student's been able to spend up to that point. So we use independent assessors, independent from the project. Peer review. Bill mentioned that science develops by having conversations, exchanging information. Peer review is an aspect of that. At least it's along similar lines. So certainly with all our presentations, we'll be asking you to come up with a view of how each of you has presented your information, the progress, for example, on your mini projects or your PhD. Life is not without problems. Problems occur daily, some minor, some major. Everyone faces problems in their personal and professional lives. We know that. We want to identify any problems early and then instigate remedial actions. So that's the mix of monitoring and assessment that we're going to use. I won't bore you again with the blah blah, as Bill calls it, of the online monitoring, but I think there's an introduction to my PGR later on in the week, so you'll see the wonders of my PGR. But just use it as a tool. I think the important thing is using it as a tool to record agreed actions after meetings with supervisors, which you should be having weekly, uploading reports, etc.
Can I just add something about,
Yes, sure.
about that? So, just based on personal experience. So, if I have a meeting, as I often do with one of my current PhD students, and he puts in a little kind of summary of what we've discussed at our meeting, and you can think, well, that's a bit tedious, isn't it? It's actually been a total revelation, because for the first few months that this student of mine, Martin, was doing this, I realised that he came out of the meeting that he and I had with a completely different idea about what it was that we had really discussed. So the fact that he'd actually had to write it down turned out to be totally invaluable, because then I could say, that's why he's heading off doing this stuff. Kind of. So we had to have quite a few little kind of discussion about what was the best way to go. So it can be really, really useful.
It is useful. Yeah, very useful.
Just to keep your supervisor on track.
So just to go into a little bit more detail about the monitoring assessment activities in year one. So, as we've said many times, you should be meeting weekly with supervisors. We're not talking about, a whole afternoon or 2 hours. It might just be a 10-15 minute catch-up in which you agree that what you're going to do in the next week, and as Bill has said, then you can bullet point those agreed actions on my PGR. 3 monthly, you'll meet with the mentor. So the mentor is someone who's not technically involved with the project, but does have, it's one of the CDT supervisors, so they'll be supervising other students. So they're working technically in the same area and they know all about the CDT. The idea of having a mentor is just that you'll have someone, again, independent from the project, that you can talk to. It may be that you're having problems with your supervisors. Perhaps you don't understand what your supervisors are saying. Perhaps there's some kind of personality clash. These are the kind of things you can discuss with your mentor, as well as talking about the progress you are making in training and research. So that's every 3 months as a minimum. I'd advise you to meet your mentors more regularly than that. But that's a meeting which is recorded, and the information from the mentor feeds eventually to the CDT Management Board. Probably the most important sort of monitoring assessment activity in this first year is the report and associated presentation to do with the mini project. So 6 months from next week, which I think is in March, next year, you'll submit a report on the 6-month mini project. We want you to write this report in the style of a journal paper. You can choose an appropriate journal, and many journals have templates that you can download to write up your report in, and try and use the style of that journal. It may be that your research is suitable for physical review letters or applied physics letters, or it may be that it's an IEEE type journal that it's more suited to. So choose a journal which is suited to your results and your experiments and your methods, and write it up in the style of that journal. We want to aim high, both for you and for us. As Roy Samble said, we want this CDT to be a centre of excellence, regarded as one of the best CBTs in the country. And for that, we're relying on you. And as I said, we want to launch you into your career, a successful, enjoyable career. If you can get a paper published after only 6 months of research, that is a really major achievement. And let's aim for that. All the mini projects have been devised by the supervisors so that they're essentially closed form and allow you and have a definitive endpoint to allow you to be able to get results of a standard suitable for publication. So that report will be marked again, as I mentioned, by independent members of staff, and they'll give feedback and tell you how to improve the report and improve your journal writing, paper writing skills. There's an associated oral presentation on that mini project, which will be peer assessed by the cohort, and we'll give you some ideas on how to come up with an assessment later on when it's closer to the actual date. You'll be following all the monitoring assessment that you do has been designed specifically for the CBT. So you'll be mixing with other PhD students who aren't CBT students. They'll be following other monitoring and assessment routines. And don't get confused if they say, oh, we've got to do a literature review by next week or something. They may have to. You don't necessarily have to. You have to do what is in the handbook, what I'm summarising here. One thing that all students have to do, which is a university requirement, and supervisors, is around April next year, fill in an online form about progress, which then triggers the re-enrollment for the following year. Okay, so the only thing you essentially have in common with the other PhD students in terms of monitoring and assessment is this filling in of this very unfortunately named annual research student monitoring form, which we all abbreviate to ARSME, but never mind. Then month 12, the management board will review the progress that you've all made and recommend progression to the following year. A little bit about year 2. The beginning of year 2, so around this time next year or a little bit later, we're asking you to write a literature review and background summary for your PhD project. Of course, it won't be complete. It won't be the final version that you would put in a thesis because you're already in the start of year 2 instead of the end of year 4. But we want you to write it in the style of an introductory chapter to a PhD thesis. So then you could actually just later on modify it and update it and use it as the introductory chapter to your PhD thesis. So hopefully by essentially the end of the first year, you'll have published a paper based on your mini project, and you'll have the first chapter of your thesis written, which will be a very good achievement. Again, an oral presentation after that based on your progress in the PhD project. And then an oral presentation at the end of year 2. Then by the time you get to year 3 and 4, which is still a relatively long way ahead, end of year 3, you should be writing, or you will have to write, a complete outline and a plan for the thesis. By an outline, I mean essentially the detailed contents page of a thesis. If you go and get any PhD thesis at the library, you'll see the contents with all the chapter headings and all the subsection headings. Once you have that, you really know what's going in the thesis and you know what's missing. If you've got a subsection heading which is about simulation, for example, of some experiment, and you haven't done that simulation, you know you're going to have to do that before the end. So that's what we're expecting at the end of year 3, and you'll get formal feedback on that and how the plan and outline should be modified so that you'll be able to generate a high quality thesis. Around 3 months from the end, at the latest of your time here, you should submit the thesis, because then there needs to be a time, usually a couple of months, where the examiners read the thesis, then you have the viva, then usually people have corrections to make on the thesis. And that all needs to be done, the corrections need to be done, and the final version, corrected version of the thesis submitted before the end of month 48. So that's what we're aiming towards, the award of a PhD for everyone by month 48 at the latest. As Roy said, I think in his introduction, if you do it in a shorter time than that, well, that's good. So other activities which aren't formally related to, are not formal monitoring and assessment activities, but give you a chance to develop your skills so that you can perform better in the formally assessed activities. Things like the bi-monthly, that's once every 2 month cohort meetings, where we'll have various talks from industrial partners, for example, and short student presentations. So that will help you develop your presentation skills. An annual conference where we get all the CDT students together. Now this year, of course, you are the CDT students, there's 18 or 19 of you. But going ahead in 3 years' time, there'll be 3 cohorts. There'll be maybe 60 of you in 4 years' time, there'll be around 80 of you. So it will be a big conference in a few years' time of all CDT students. And that's where you will be able to exchange information about your projects and present posters and have selected all presentations from some students as well. So, to summarize, we want you to be a success. By you being a success, we'll be a success. And that's good for everyone. And we want to help you to perform and achieve at the highest levels. Again, I think Roy Sample said, you'll find out how good you are. Well, we want you to be really very, very good, and we want you to help you to do that. And so the monitoring and assessment is there to help you to achieve your potential. And you'll have your own ideas of what probably a good PhD student might produce over 4 years, 3 or 4 years. Well, here's a bullet point of something you might aim for. At least 4 peer-reviewed journal papers. You should be attending some national and international conferences. We've got money to help you to do that. If you can spend time with an industrial partner in their facilities or with an academic partner, we've got lots of academic partners overseas. And you can have placements with them to do specific experiments in a collaborative way. Do all of those things, take full advantage of the training opportunities, and then you will be in a very good position to launch the next stage of your career. I noticed that Rosie had I didn't have a what if section. I noticed you put it in the agenda, so I'll put a what if. So what if? I'll put a few what ifs. I'm sure other people could think of other what ifs. But so this, well, it's not really to do with monitoring and assessment, but what ifs. If you don't understand the aspects of your PhD project, Bill said, we all question our understanding from continuously. If we don't do that, we don't usually improve our understanding. But so don't worry if you don't understand something. But if your lack of understanding or perceived lack of understanding is stopping you making progress, speak to your supervisors. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you on the technical aspects of the project. If you're finding it difficult to access technical facilities, which is slowing you up, be that laboratory facilities or computer facilities, again, speak to your supervisors. Your supervisors should be in control of the laboratory facilities that you need access to, or should know the people who control the laboratory facilities that you need access to. If it's a computational problem, if Ian doesn't mind, I think Ian's probably a good first contact point for that. If you don't know what your budget is or how to access it, again, you could speak to the supervisors, or perhaps it's easy to speak to Rosie about that. If you have a clash with your supervisors, and not everyone always gets on with everyone in life. That's just life, part of life. So if you find it very difficult to work with your supervisors, and that therefore is affecting your progress, in life we have to work with people we don't necessarily like. That's, again, part of life. You don't have to like everyone that you work with in a professional sense. However, if some kind of personal difficulty with your supervisors, again, is stopping you making progress, then you need to speak to someone about it. So speak to your mentor, I'd suggest, as a first instance, or one of the CDT directors. Okay. If you've got personal problems that affect your work, health problems, other problems, again, you need to let us know. Speak to your supervisors and the mentor. In general, if you're facing difficulties of any kind, you need to let someone know about it. Just don't suffer in silence. Finally, the CDT Student Advisory Group. In our application, we said that we would set up a student advisory group. It's important for us to get your views on how things are going. We've come up with this scheme. We thought it would work quite well. I'm sure some things will work well. Some things probably won't work as well as we hoped. So we need to know from you what works well, what doesn't work. what doesn't work well. So in the application form, we said we'd consult the student body on the precise nature and role of the student advisory group, because we don't want to be dictatorial about how the student advisory group should be set up and what it should actually do. So we suggested it might have a small number of members, 4 or 5 members, ultimately 1 per year group, since there are 4 years that each student will be here. That you elect your own chairperson, that you report its findings to the CDT Management Board, either formally by minutes, if you want to take minutes of a meeting, that's fine by us. We're suggesting that Ian sits as an observer on that advisory group, and he could act as a human conduit for information. If you prefer that route to formal minuting, we don't mind. You know, set your own agenda. So I'd like you to start thinking, please, about the format of this student advisory group. You're the first year, so we can't have 1 from each year. We'd only have 1 person on the student advisory group this year. So I suggest you have perhaps 3 people on it for this year from this group. But you know, you think about it. You might want to set up something which takes other PhD students who aren't in the CDT from engineering and physics. But it's entirely up to you. But discuss it amongst yourselves, and I suggest that you come up in a few weeks' time with some suggestions about how this advisory group should be set up and how it will work.
And we'll prompt that by email. And if someone's speaking to you later in the week about the SSLC, hang on, acronyms.
Staff student liaison committee.
Staff student liaison committee. That should explain how this group could make it with that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So that was my last slide. So hopefully that was clear, if not interesting. Yeah.
Are there any brief questions for Phil or for David? Brilliant. It's all in the handbook. Okay. So should we start to make those? Thank you, David. Very much. It's in the intro. Should I do that? Still in there.
Yeah.
Look what you did. Yeah. With your biscuit.
No, he does.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know he does stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to be the first if that's working.
Oh, okay.
Then I'm free to run. Do stay here with me, not a problem. And what will we click on here now to make this work?
Yeah, just click on there.
Oh,
There you go.
did,
Are you going to go? You should be president.
Oh, it is. It's already up there. So I presume that's recording.
Sorry, I just realised.
Yeah, okay. That's fine then.
I hope it's not going to get too stuffy, but if a lot of people start coming through to get their lunch because the kitchen's just there, well, I'll close this door in a moment. So there's a lot of people here to support you through your studies. I'll try to whiz through this so I'm not repeating things that I've now heard others say. And then Ian's going to talk about his role as technical director. Oops. Obviously, I'm incompetent with this. Has it run out? Battery. It's just the left light, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the keyboard. Okay. Yeah.
Probably just.
You do have nice stretches.
Thank you very much. That's why he's technical director and I'm not. So I'm the administration officer. That means I get to do lots of fun things with emails and spreadsheets and making sure that you're informed, that staff are informed, and assisting in recruitment. So it's external communications as well. And also with our industrial partners. I'll organise events like this. When we get to the point of having these conferences, I'll be organising things like that, and the training events that are particular for the CDT. I do room bookings and things like this, so nitty-gritty. I also look after the boards. That's the oversight board, who keep an eye on the management board, and I will take their minutes and that kind of stuff. So I'm a good person to come to if you've got a general query about the ins and outs of how the CDT works, and some other stuff, including finances. But the people, other than that, I think David's run through pretty comprehensively who to talk to about what if you've got a problem. Basically, ask your supervisor. And if that's not appropriate, it's usually your mentor who will be monitoring your progress. You've got technicians and staff to support IT, as well as Ian, who looks after the CDT specific stuff. The CDT's directors, you know, if you get to a certain level and something's not happening, they want to know about it as well. Again, I'm going to repeat what people have already said. If there's a problem, we want to know early. And as I say, the student representative group, as well as your supervisors, mentors, and all of these people are all routes to letting us know about that, about any problems. And then there's our university departments, for example, the postgraduate research office, who liaise closely with finance, and we'll introduce you to them at some point as well. The oversight boards are also there. They want to hear your voice. That may well be, I would imagine it will be, through the student representative group. They're going to next meet in January, as planned at the moment. They do want to hear from you directly as well, but we'll talk to you when we're talking about the student representative group about who might go along. Maybe it's the chair, maybe it's all three members of the representative group. But they want to talk to you directly, without any of us in the room. It may be, it's been suggested, that perhaps the students might write one of the bits of the annual report, but that's all to come out in the wash and be arrived at through conversations with yourselves. Please, what we need from you to make our lives easier as well. This is in some ways your job, a fun job. You get to be researchers and follow your passion. But please, the boring things, treat it like a job. If I'm emailing you, it's probably because the board have asked me to send you something or to get in touch. Please reply if I need a reply. It'll save me sending other emails, which will be boring for you and fill your inbox. I'll try, for my part, not to email you unnecessarily, but at the same time make sure that you hear about things going on in the college. Okay. We have a calendar, and for some things I will be sending you calendar invites to special events where I need to know if you're coming or not, especially if it's an optional one rather than part of your course and your training. Now, not everybody uses Microsoft as their operating system, so this can cause some hiccups, particularly for Mac users, but there is an option that links in with Outlook where you can send a reply, and I can make sure that I update my lists. Please choose send a reply, and then that will update my list. Sorry, very boring and practical, but it gives me a real headache. You can put your events in the calendar if you decide to organise something for the students. That can be done as well. The most important thing I need to get across to you here, though, is finance and your study records. There. No, it's in here. That's in here. Yep. Sorry about that. You have £1,500 per year for consumables. That's daily bits and pieces that you use. It's for small equipment. And it's for UK travel. It's yours to manage, as it says up there, with your supervisor's advice. If you're not sure what counts as consumables, small equipment and UK travel, ask your supervisor in the first instance. They know how things work here. We need you to keep records of what you're spending this money on, but it's up to you to maintain those records. It's very, very good for your CV. We've been told by our industrial partners that they want to know that you've had experience of managing a budget. If you need help, if you don't know how to use Excel spreadsheets, for example, some people aren't very familiar with using them, then come and ask. It's not a problem. These will be stored online on a cloud server, is this right? Yep, cloud-based file system. So your supervisor, mentor, myself and directors and Ian will be able to access that as well as the finance office, because we just need to be able to see, hang on, where are they up to on their budget? Again, weekly, really good. Anytime you spend, log it on there. I'll show you briefly what it looks like, but I don't want to bore you with spreadsheets. It's boring enough. It looks like that. There'll be a tab repeating everything I've just said, and it's all in the handbook. So we just need various bits and pieces of information from you. Okay, boring bit done. If you need to go beyond your budget of £1,500 in 1 year, it may not be possible. We do have a little bit of flexibility in the CDT finances, but not a huge amount. So don't assume the cash is there. We do need your supervisor to then let me know that they approve of what it is you're asking for. So if you need a piece of equipment that is going to go into your second year budget, we might be able to draw from that, for example. The supervisor needs to get to say they've approved, and then I will take it to the management board where they will regularly review people's spending and approve or not, depending what it is and how urgently you need it for your studies. Things that have a budget that you're not managing include the following that David's mentioned. So conferences, whether at home or abroad, other than the travel to them, which comes under UK travel. Industrial visits and academic visits, so all of those things. You need to get approval from your supervisor, who will email me and give a rationale, a reason why it's important for your studies, if it's a conference, whether you're talking at it or not. And I will then take it to the management board to get their approval. Don't book, and make sure you leave enough time to get the management board approval. Okay, this will give you headaches otherwise, so try and think ahead a little bit. You're all adults. I'll leave you to it, and it's all in the habit. How to book things. This would be very dull if I went through it all, so I won't. Travel, there's something called Click Travel. You can get quotes, you can book online. They do most of the hard work for you, and then you send off a requisition form, for example, for conferences. I'm the person who will make sure that that gets signed off against the budgets that we have for this. But again, you need to check with us first. Denise Watts is here 1 day a week, otherwise is over in Harrison. She looks after the finances for us, just so you know the face you're looking for if you need to go to the finance office and ask some questions. Subsistence. For those of you who are not English native speakers, subsistence means food and drink. So when you're travelling by train to a conference, it's what you eat and drink, but it can't include alcohol. Okay, sad but true. Finally, read the handbook. It's all in there. Don't try and remember this now. We're just going to keep pushing you to the handbook, because all the details of how to do this, the bits to remember, how to claim your expenses back, it's all in there. If you get stuck, that's what we're here for. And with that, I'll hand over to Ian.
First of all, very important thing, you can get
Profound
alcohol. You
question.
can get alcohol,
Can you?
but only if you're entertaining people not from the university. But just be very careful for that, because otherwise you won't be able to claim any money back. But in some circumstances you can. That's important. Okay, who am I and what am I here for? So who am I? So we've been introduced, but I've been here for a very long time, and I've basically been only doing research for all of that time. So I did my PhD here, well I did my undergraduate here, did my PhD here with voice samples, and since then I've been a postdoc since 2002, and I've worked with Pete McCusick, Bill Barnes, voice samples, Alistair Hibbins, there's various different postdocs. So I've done most of the bits and pieces that we work on. Now I've got this new post, and they're calling it Technical Director, but really what I'm responsible for is these things here, okay? A lot of the boring things. And I can tell you that whilst I might be being paid to do this, these things are not the reason why I'm doing the job. What I actually want to do is some of the science as well, okay? But I am involved in sorting out equipment, computer software, licenses, hardware, all of those kind of things, the health and safety, various different aspects. But what I really do want to emphasise is that I have been and want to continue to be a researcher, and I want to be involved in all of the research that you guys do, okay? You're about to start doing your PhDs, and it's probably one of the luckiest times that you're going to have, because it's the time where you will have hardly any other responsibilities. Okay, you will be able to do research for 90% of your time, and if you were to ask any academics now if they could go back and do a PhD again where they didn't have all the teaching and administration responsibilities, they would love to. Okay, So a bit more detail of some of the boring things. So computer systems. You all know that you have a computer waiting for you when you get into the labs. I've emailed you about them. They will be there next week. I'm not responsible for fixing your computers and things. There's actually a help desk at the college that does that. So you just email helpdesk at EMPS, or there's a phone number you can find on the website. In addition to that, we do not at the moment, but we will have a file server for you to store all of your data, etc. Okay? That's going to be a cloud-based system, and it basically is going to work similar to Dropbox, Google Drive, all of these different things. You'll have a directory on your hard drive. Anything you put in there will be automatically synced to the file server, and there's going to be somewhere around 250 gigabytes per person. Hopefully that should be enough. That doesn't include the computers that you might be using on one piece of equipment and things like that, which will be backed up separately, and that's really the research group's responsibility. There's also this thing called open access. Now, this is an EPSRC grant, and because it's being funded by the government, all the data, etc., has to be openly available to anybody else. Okay? The onus on that is on you, but what it really means in general is when you publish a paper, or when you publish your thesis, okay, you need to have all of the data, okay, in a manner in which somebody else can access. Okay? And this is the raw numbers and how you then analyse the data. There's going to be a talk sometime in the next couple of weeks. I've still got to organise the chap to do it, but he will give you more detail on that. But it's just to give you that information now, because when you start writing papers, and this will be important for your 6-monthly project, you need to have a data management system whereby you can have all of that information ready, okay? Because you'll have to store it in a particular place where people can access it. And if you think that's a bit onerous for a paper, imagine all of your data from your thesis having to be openly available and having the information of how you analyse it and everything being available to anybody else. You want to start doing this at the beginning, because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare when you come to write your thesis. Health and safety. Bill already said that it's very important. It is very important. But pretty much it's your responsibility. Okay? You're going to get a lot of health and safety courses next week, going on about fire safety training, electrical safety training, cryogenics, etc. They will teach you all you need to know, okay? But how you act on a day-to-day basis is entirely down to you. Be safe. My role in this is that I will just be doing an overview and checking up on research groups to make sure that you're keeping the safety data sheets, etc. Your research groups should have all of that organised already. The skills-based workshops. Again, I've emailed you all about this several times. You all know what courses you've chosen to do. We'll go through this next week. So next week on Tuesday, I will be coming down to the lab or the office space in physics at 10 o'clock and the office space in Harrison at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'll be there for an hour or two going through all of these technical aspects and actually getting things sorted, getting you set up with the computers, all the different things you need. Okay? We'll go through the workshops then. Some of them are already on the calendar, which you can access via the handbook to see when they're going to be. One thing we do need to sort out is anybody that chose Mathematica courses, that we need to sort something out fairly quickly, because you have to be able to purchase the software and then claim it back because it's a personal license. Okay? So anybody that has chosen any of the Mathematica courses, find me sometime in the next day or so. Teaching and demonstrating. So this is causing some trouble because the university needs PhD students to do teaching and demonstrating. Okay? You're part of the workforce, you're part of the way that our undergraduates learn. However, there are some limitations. You can only do 7 hours per week and up to 100 hours per year. And there may not be any reduction in your PhD efforts. So any time you spend doing demonstrating has to be made up in what would have otherwise been your spare time. But you do get paid for this. What's the current rate?
£15 something.
Okay, £15 something an hour. Okay, so for some of you who might have, need the money for financial reasons, this is a way that you can make some money. Okay, 7 hours, £15 a week, £50 per hour. It's not bad. But it's really important that you realise that whether you do any teaching is entirely up to you. Okay, your supervisors or other people, other academics can't make you do demonstrating. If you don't want to do it, and you instead wanted to concentrate just on your research, that is entirely up to you. Also, the first 6 months of your studies, as you've been told many times, they are going to be extremely busy. You have a lot of training and you've got your 6 month mini project. Okay? Keep that in mind when choosing if you're going to do any demonstrating or not. The other thing is that if somebody does approach you to do demonstrating, then make sure they realise that your training, etc., comes first. So if, for example, there is a course that you have to do as part of your training, and it clashes with the demonstrating, you won't be able to do that demonstrating. Okay? That is something they have to be aware of, because they'll have to get cover for you at that point, and it can cause problems. Okay, so those are the things you need to be aware about with teaching and demonstrating. Seminars and group meetings. The various different research groups will have group meetings. Okay, the group that I'm mostly involved in, the electromagnetic and acoustic materials group, is where a lot of you will be. We have weekly meetings, and as Bill said earlier, communication is a really important skill that you need to develop. Okay, in those meetings, you will be expected to present. Okay, and when you present, you will be asked questions about the research you've done, sometimes robustly, but it's something to get used to, and you will be expected to ask questions of the other people presenting as well. Okay, it is important because when you go to conferences, if you're presenting every few weeks in our group meetings, okay, you'll be fully prepared to present in front of a big room full of lots of people who are then going to also ask you questions. There are also, as I think Rosie said, and somebody else says, bi-monthly meetings, but they're going to be organised. We'll give you more information about that close to the time. On to the last couple of things. So the mechanical workshops. Next week, when I come to your office spaces to go through things, I will introduce you to who will be your first point of contact in the mechanical workshop. You will need to have things made. Okay. If you're in the microwave group, it might even be your samples made in there, but it will certainly be things like sample holders and other things. Once you've have something you need doing, you'll go see your first point of contact, you'll have a discussion about what it is, then you have to submit some paperwork, and then your job will be made. And the other thing I'm here for is day-to-day research assistance. So as I said, I don't just want to be a draw-fly technician, I want to be involved in your research and the science. I've been here a long time, I know what I'm doing, at least in some respects, and these are my research interests, or have been in the past, but basically anything that any of you are doing, I'll probably be interested in it. And also the specific things that I have quite a lot of knowledge of are various modelling tools, LabVIEW, MATLAB, Fortran, general programming and bits and pieces. So if you have any troubles with those and you can't get something to work, if there isn't anybody else that can help you in the research group, then come to me and I'm sure I can try to help you. And that's not really stuff because she went first. Okay, so if you've got any questions, find me during the next week or so, but I think we're now going on to
We
something
are
else?
indeed. What I forgot off the end of my
Okay.
slides though was something called UDB, which is a university database. Now when you look up a staff member profile online, if you did XT University and Rosie Dixon, I should pop up. I sadly haven't got my photo up there yet. And a little blurb about the person and what they do. You need to have one as well. That's something else you need to keep up to date with. Information on conferences you've been to, papers you've done, things like that. It's a very useful networking tool. So if you meet people or people are interested in your research area, they might find your page going through our website through, oh, there's the research topic that interests me, I'd like to get in touch with that person. It's your public face on a university website. So just to put in mind, as it says at the bottom of your mini to-do list on the week's programme, you need to have a photo ready to send through so you can start setting that up. But I think Ian's going to cover that next week.
Yeah, I'll do that in a session.
That's great. So what we've got now are 3 people who've already got a PhD, and I'm very happy to talk to you about how that went and things that they wish they knew when they started, or you know, this is your chance to have a chat with some guys who've been there and done it, and what went well, what worked well for them, what didn't work so well, what they wish they knew when they'd started. Please ask some questions, but they're going to start just saying a few words about themselves for 5 minutes, even less, very briefly. And then we'll break for lunch. They've actually set it up in the other room, which is great because there's more air in there. So we'll go through and have lunch there and carry on chatting with everybody over lunch. Is that okay? Great. So over to you guys. Yeah, you can all get up together if you like. But, as you prefer. This is my colleague Sam, who is a postdoc researcher. Paz and Helen. Over to you.
Yeah, we haven't got slides or anything.
That's
We're
all
not
right.
that organised, which is a good thing to be. So yeah, like we all did PhDs here. I did mine downstairs in graphene. You guys.
Sorry about the noise.
So yeah, so I guess we've all kind of come up with a few things that we think are really important to remember, or not to remember that we did badly. So the first thing that I'd say is organisation, like keeping notes and like not you can remember quite a lot of stuff in your head, and you think, oh, don't worry, I'll remember that, or I'll call this file this. And then in 3 years' time, when someone goes, you know, you did that stuff, and now I want, I don't know, whatever bit of data, you will spend hours of your life looking for it again, trying to remember what insane system you devised in the first kind of few weeks. So, like, I'm still bad at it, but I really wish I was better. That's one thing really to concentrate on. Make sure you're keeping notes of everything. Even little things like when you're in the lab, just write stuff down there and then, because inevitably you'll be writing a paper in 3 months' time and really want to know what power you had the laser at on that particular day, and you'll have to do everything again because you've forgotten. Yes, that's my first thing. Keep going. I'll keep going with things. The other thing I would say is, like, if you're an experimentalist, which I have been and still am, if it's working, don't turn it off and go home because it's 5 o'clock. It's really tempting. Like when you're in there and it's all working, you go, oh, it's getting late, I can't be bothered. It'll still work tomorrow, and you'll come in tomorrow and you'll spend all day again making it work. So if it's working, you have quite flexible hours, I guess. I don't know what the rules for you guys are, but like you're living in a world with kind of flexible hours, right? So just do the work then, come in late the next morning, but don't turn it off and expect it to work the next day, because it never ever does. Those are my first 2 things. And if I think of any more while you guys are talking, I will type up. Ask questions, by the way, if anyone wants to ask questions.
So again, with the organisation thing, it's really important. I can't stress how important it is. When you're writing your thesis and you want to know the first experiment you did, what little tweak you made to the experiment to make it work, and all these different files you've got, it's probably the most important thing to know what you've done, where you can find your file. So I would suggest keeping a very rigorous lab book, even if you print out a graph, say where that file is saved, what it means, anything you can about it. Also, something that I've developed is just keeping a little sort of notepad readme file in each of the folders with all my experimental data, just so I can say what polarization I use, what tweak I made to the experiment, or any fine detail about whatever it was I was doing that day. So that's my first thing. Another thing that I found extremely important is networking. So hopefully you guys will go on some conferences, which is a really good thing. It's a great experience. It's a great chance for you to talk to other people in the field about your work and to find out what they do. So either by going to conferences, or if we have a visitor to the group, go and see their presentation if they're giving a presentation, or talk to them afterwards if that's possible. Find out what they're doing, if they're interested in what you're doing. By doing this, by networking, you'll find you can create new collaborations, which I've done. I'm currently working on 3 different collaborations, and some of those I have developed myself through going to conferences and meeting new people. You'll also be able to maybe go to a different university, so use some equipment they have that we don't necessarily have, start a new collaboration that way maybe, get new data from their equipment, which is also a really good thing for the thesis. And something that happened to me was I went to a conference, met the conference organisers, their students, and I was actually asked last year to go and give an hour-long seminar to their research group, which is also a wonderful thing. And the final thing, which Ian just reminded me about, was group meetings. So go to them and you will learn how to give a great talk. It will give you confidence if you're lacking in confidence, because every week or every other week you have to talk in front of the group, in front of the professors, Bill Barnes, people who are really kind of high up in the research arena. You'll gain a lot of confidence.
So I think my first point is one that both Kaz and Sam made, was being organised with your files. I literally lost hours, probably if not days, when I was writing up trying to find pieces of work. I could picture what the file looked like in my head, but it would just save you so much time and effort if you just make sure all your experimental data is tied up with certain models or certain files, and make sure you just know where they are, because it will just make you so more chilled out when you're kind of coming to write it up in paper form or writing a thesis. Just make your life much easier for yourself by doing that. I guess my other 2 points were to do with kind of writing up and sort of finishing. So I would say it's never too early to start thinking about what you want to do when you finish, because when you're starting to write up your thesis or in your final year, you're going to be really busy, and you may be kind of consumed by that rather than the thought of what you want to do afterwards, and it can become quite stressful if you kind of think, where's my next paycheck coming from, what am I going to do when I have my thesis in? So the earlier you start thinking about it, starting to formulate an idea of what you do and don't want to do, kind of the better, and then it kind of takes a bit of the pressure off of the decision making kind of when you're in that sort of final sort of stressful year. And the other thing is, obviously a PhD is going to take up a lot of your time, a lot of your energy. It's not easy, but that's why only a few people kind of have them. But make sure that you have some interest outside of work, where you can switch off from work, and make sure you keep doing that even towards the end, because I think a lot of us found that it kind of became all consuming at the end, and you just need to have that thing, whatever it is, that you can keep doing so you can stop thinking about work. Even if it's, I don't know, playing football for a couple of hours every week, just make sure you keep doing that thing so you can kind of switch off from work. And I think that is quite important, that you kind of keep your other aspects of your life going as well as kind of doing all your PhD work, because it will become a big part of your life, so it's important just to have just something that's not work related.
It's also kind of nice to be friendly to each other in the lab, like having mates like in the lab, and because like we spend a lot of time like going to the pub after work or just spending. It makes it so much more pleasant, especially if you got to spend a late night in the lab, having someone else around who you actually enjoy spending time with.
Yeah, kind of late night curries and things like that. I remember having.
Yeah, pizza delivered in.
Yeah.
So not that you have to stay the same times.
But there will be times when you're
Yeah.
kind of staying late, and it's comforting if you know that your mate's just down the corridor doing the same thing.
Another thing I was going to add to your like group meetings and things, ask questions of people. Like always, don't feel stupid about asking questions, and it doesn't matter who they are. Like just ask. Usually, you'll ask what you think is a stupid question, and the person who you think's all intelligent will go, that's it. I don't understand either. And then you can learn a lot from doing it. And like, if you're reading papers, you can send these people emails and ask them. You can. It doesn't matter if you don't know who they are. You can just be like, I'm reading your paper. It's really interesting. Can you explain this to me? Because it's not necessarily, but that's totally fine. Like people don't mind doing that sort of thing, and you may even get to know these people because they're obviously working in the same field as you, and that's again useful just to know people. Like I spent a lot of my PhD going off places to work with people who we met through these sort of things. I've just come back from Barcelona for a similar thing. Went out there to learn, just to get some people there to teach me how to make something, so I can come back here and make it. And there's money to do that sort of thing if that's what you need. Yeah, so ask questions. That's the end point. I think that's all done. So like we're gonna be around, so just ask more questions.
So have you got any questions now? I said we'll be next door if you want to kind of ask one to one. But...
Yeah.
What, like, if you have any, what one mistake did you make that you could perhaps warn us about in the future?
Procrastinating about starting writing out. Not wanting to, and just being like, I'll just do this experiment. If I do this experiment, my thesis will be better. And then just waiting until I stop being paid and everything else, and then going, ooh, I really got to write a thesis now at high speed. And that was incredibly stressful because, yeah, I procrastinated too long. And not having like really start to sort of, it feels really good as you go through, so like get papers out. If you've got a paper out, you're like, that's a chapter. You get 2 papers out, you're like, that's 2 chapters. And once you can start counting it like that, like writing up work that's been finished is really easy in your thesis. It's writing up the stuff that you're still kind of half doing because you just end up.
Yeah, I think it's easier to sometimes move on to something new rather than finish something off, and I think that's the trap that I fell into, that it's kind of more exciting to start something new and shiny rather than finish off something that maybe you've been struggling with for a while. But as Sam said, if you do take the time, it sounds like you're going to be kind of pushed into writing the papers, that is going to make your life so much easier when you come to write it up. And it also gives you the confidence that if you've already got a paper published on one of your chapters in your thesis, then it's going to be really difficult for your examiners to turn around and say, oh, that's not good enough. And it's like, well, it's been peer reviewed already. So there's several reasons why it's a good thing. So yeah, just try and write up as you go, or write up papers as you go.
Yeah. To-do lists are really useful, actually. Yeah. Doing things that you say you're going to do, so that annoys people if you don't.
And also, I think you'll learn how you work as you go along. Like, I work quite well to deadlines, and if you set, so I know I need to set myself kind of interim deadlines rather than one big deadline like a few months in advance. So I think you'll quite quickly learn what kind of motivates you, and the sooner you realise that, the probably more efficient that you'll find that you work.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just wondering if any of you had any kind of, like, do you bother maintaining online blogs or any of that kind of stuff, or do you read online blogs? That kind of stuff?
I mean,
Some people do. I don't. I'm not that organised.
I think we're probably, it's becoming more of a thing now. Maybe we were just, maybe we're just at the tail end where it wasn't such a big online presence, but I think obviously now it's becoming.
There are some good things. I had this ResearchGate thing was quite good. In terms of being able to ask questions, you kind of like sign up to it and you say, I'm working in these areas, and you put your papers and stuff on there and people can find you. It's kind of like this all this social networking between scientists. It's essentially like a Facebook for scientists, but there's lots of like, I get emails saying, people asking questions about my area and you can answer them and you can read other people's answers. So you can just put stuff up there like, I'm trying to do this equation, or I don't quite understand this bit of physics. Does anyone else know how? There's a lot of fabrication stuff on there as well. Like, I'm trying to make these samples, but every time it doesn't work. How do you do this? ResearchGate. Yeah, that has been quite useful recently. Lots of people struggling with graphene fabrication, so there's a lot of graphene stuff on there because there's a lot of people doing graphene, which is yeah.
Like that. And what are the perspectives after finishing the PhD? How many people go to the academic center? How many people leave university?
I mean, there is a kind of high percentage that have gone into academia, but there's definitely a big, probably over half, I guess, don't. A lot of, so if I just think about like kind of the people I graduated with, a lot of people are working in sort of high sciencey industry, kinetic, all these kind of like government labs, or other people working for kind of small startup kind of lab companies, a few teachers.
Yeah, quite a few teachers actually.
That sort of thing is what people are doing afterwards. I guess I know I wanted to do a postdoc. It was actually only right at the end when I was kind of enjoying it again.
I think you learn as you're doing your PhD, you learn what it's like to be a researcher and what it would be like to go on in academia. So you will probably decide partway through your PhD.
So it's not, not massively different. Lots more like pressure to get lots of things done. Now doing career stuff rather than like you have a thesis as a goal doing a PhD, but after that you kind of get a bit more like, okay, I just need to publish as much as I possibly can so that people will continue to hire me. Which is a downside of academia, right? You will come out and you will be on temporary contracts. At least one, maybe up to like 3 or 4, I guess. Before you can start to get permanent jobs. So you're going to have a bit of time where you have no sort of long-term job security being an academic. Although we all found jobs, right? And usually if you're good, you might stay around, like we will stay here. Quite nice, I think. But yeah. It's fun. Sort of. Cool. Should we have lunch? Is it lunchtime? Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Hey, I'd rather watch too many notes than not enough. I'll be like running through these pockets.
Really?
I'd rather be the geek with too
So
many
we're going to
notes.
bring the food in here because there's other people.
So they're coming through. We'll bring the food there.
So yeah.
Awesome. I mean,
Can you just make room for it.
Yes. Restart some of this stuff out the way. Sorry, I will sack it. That leads me to do.
The trolley's just under here, so
Oh, there is a trolley.
set the lunch up in the wrong room, there's toilets going through, so if people could help by putting any dirty ones in here, stuff that neatly. Wow, so they fit. The glasses don't go in.
Try to get your in hand. Yeah, there's one just at the far end. You just keep walking until you hit the end of the building.
Too much sitting.
Yeah, I think it might be, you know. Or maybe it's too much hill walking. That's just to rub my hips up.
Yeah, the coffee's probably in the day, I make some fresh of it. Grab those glasses.
I think there's something glass. I think this is all
Yeah,
book
yeah,
stuff.
just sit back there and take them through to the kitchen.
Is that right?
I'll get the plate. Yep, so, hang on.
Sort of thing.
Literally going to
Are you not going to eat in the nice room?
No, we're eating. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go in there, have a wander around in a minute for some fresh air as well. Actually, to help that, if somebody, well, a couple of people could just pull back the blinds, then more air will actually come in. Or rotate them so that they're open, and then the air will come through.
Which one's that one? So many choices. I don't know. This one's separate, I think there's another. No.
Shall I do that? I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, it's falling out. Right on the edge of the open window.
Or on this table here, but yeah, on the table's good.
I can pick up all these glasses.
I think that's why they decided to put the.
I think that's
Yeah.
It's a nice view on this side, isn't it?
I deliberately
nice view out.
very much on this piece.
I hear the conversation.
I've been calling him out.
I was actually just listening.
You were just waiting. Okay, back over.
Okay, so what we need to do,
Yeah, it's actually
you're
quite
registered, yeah?
No one said
Yeah,
that already.
okay. You have a
No.
email address now?
No, you
Yes.
did.
Excellent.
Original.
So,
Adding to the conversation
Is
we can claim the money back because mathematical costs
I only realised. Yeah. I was always like, oh, I can't really see anything. But I'm sure it's just like, you know, advertising, which will. Oh my god. One of your eyes.
What's the problem about your bank accounts?
It's kind of like.
Yeah.
It's
So once you've done that, then we
yeah.
Yeah.
2.5. I know.
What we need to do is
Yeah. One's like normal. Yeah.
Oh, we can fix that.
Yeah. So it's just for
So is it bad to do over like
yeah, so it's
it's like how do you even get around?
One side is thicker. Oh, that's why I paid for Philly. Oh, wow. That's why I've got the girl was just like, oh, yeah, usually it's just she was like, I want to have 1 hour.
Gorgeous, isn't it? We get, because we're down the hill in Washington, and we get building and that direction where we're in the lift.
food again.
We're gonna get fed tomorrow, yeah. It's like the longest, most important day as well. Have you planned your lesson yet? Put out topics, any idea? But it has to be on physics, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't say it has to be, it says recommended, I think. It sounds like it's because you guys
Someone's joking. That would be quite good though. Interactive. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Get involved. I'm just going to do basic answers. I always think it's pretty hard though because you sound like the professor wants is just the guy teaching a bit of maths. For example.
Yeah. I read it when
the actual course.
Yeah.
And the font is something one of the best
Oh, it's just a mathematical proof. Yeah, that's cool. That's nice. That's really well rounded.
The basic grammar and stuff. I got stuck when I got to the use of non-native speakers.
No, I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah. That should be up to it was. Another tongue is when you go to an educational institution, I think we're speaking.
So get the sofa seat. Might as well get the sofa seat. I'm a Jake, by the way. Jake. I'm India. Somebody prepared tomorrow a teaching session. They said in the mail that everybody needs to make a presentation. 8 minutes. Yeah, people that did it last year or done it already just said just kind of you can talk for like 5 to 8 minutes about something you know, like maybe your master's project or research that you try doing or like one but then you don't need to do anything like formal like make a presentation. It's just you speaking to like 2 or 3 people. Okay. Yeah, it's not too not too bad.
Then I tried to make the slide
So what was your background? I even started as PhD. I did masters in radio physics and electronics, but it was just formally because on the second year I went to the scientific department and started to do some science. Yes, and it was just slightly connected with radio physics because radio physics is formally interaction with any fat particles with any waves or any waves with any matter. Yes.
Long division, no one
so not just radio waves. Yes, not just radio waves. Pretty much anything. So I work with sound beams per second.
sputtering will investigate it. Any questions? Sputtering metals under high temperatures. But it happened so that my supervisor died at third year of my studies, on the third year when I had to
Depends what you do while you're down it. Do you roll around on a unicycle?
After that, I stayed in university for a year or two, but I thought that I have no perspectives because the new boss of the new chief of our department was from the biological faculty. Yes, she proposed some project, but it was for her purpose, mostly trust. And then the financing of that sputtering project stopped at all. Yeah, and I saw that I'm doing not the things that I want.
Yeah. Say hello. It's a bit of a shame they didn't work out, but at least you've moved away from doing what have you, what's your project?
Yes, my project with Jacob is quantum entanglement, not only entanglement, other types of correlations. I'm not very intelligent in that because I was almost a pure experimenter, and as I see, they are moving me to be pure service.
A whole new way of life.
It's quite a shock.
It's quite a change. You'll be working with, I think, probably like, do you know Tom Melvin? He's one of the, he's fairly new at it, but he teaches a course on quantum optics and photonics. So if you get a chance to watch that course, that sounds like really relevant. He does it in after Christmas, so like January onwards.
I didn't quite understand. Can we have the possibility to attend the courses which are undergraduate?
It's like being back in high, like
any courses.
Yeah, if you just email the person who's running the course, I mean I checked with Rosie this one, but if you just email the lecture and say, oh, is it right if I sit back and just sitting on your course, I'm sure it makes sense.
And where can you see the timetable?
Would you prefer to demonstrate?
If you log on to
Somewhere in the
yeah, I think on the undergraduate physics one, there's a list of modules. Go through those and then find out who's running it.
Do you think it'd be amusing or depressing?
Because
I have to teach this child.
Absolutely different. We have just strict timetable like in school, and you cannot choose anything.
I remember when we did
Even in my primary school, I have more choice than in university.
Oh really?
Yes, because we had, I studied linguistics, so we could at least choose the direction. So, for example, I didn't study law, I didn't study some geography or economics, because I wanted to enter physical faculty, but I knew that I don't like law and economics, and people who study law, they didn't study physics or biology. So, and in university they were absolutely
Just do
Moreover, we studied law, obligatory law, history, culture, culture studies.
Yeah, my lab work.
Of course, you know when the lecturer stands
Which means
beyond
you're ready
the auditory of physics students and tells that the sun is in the center of the universe and there are different types of energies flowing through you.
They don't really go into that. They would not be very well attended.
You have to
Culture studies was at least well, I don't know how to say it in English, just that you can pass it or not pass it. A credit, yes? Credit. Yes, it was a credit. And for example, in psychology, it was an examination. Yes, you get a mark which then passes into your diploma. Teacher spoiled she spoiled for some people the diploma.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Headline, do you optional modules where you could either choose to I know some people did economics. Yep, just what if you choose to come to Exeter? Saw the application, saw the
In the last year, I sent applications everywhere because
it's such a delay.
many people from my university went to work. I think that maybe all who work the best, so to say. Yes, everybody, somebody here in England, the guys in Liverpool, somebody to America, some people went to Poland, and I just copied their way of activities. They send emails everywhere, proposing to fix them. Yes. And it happened so that Professor Campbell applied me, and we had conversation by Skype, then with the offer. After that, I was informed that enrolled.
Okay. So you in September kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what I did. I maxed out my credit card and I maxed out my overdraft.
Yeah, I have to pay
I owe my family a load of money.
I'm paying like 50 quid a month just on my credit card.
How big is it?
And do you have from this university?
£2,500.
What credit card?
Yeah, so I did my
What did you buy?
4-year undergraduate.
No,
Yeah, just did like 4 years.
Only 4?
Yeah, we did a like 4-year course.
And do you have bachelor's degree?
I know, I have a master's degree and a bachelor's.
Yes, it.
It's a different master's. It's kind of like, it means you were an undergraduate. Everyone, they only really do physics and engineering. So when I explain to people who do like economics, they're like, oh, it's just a master's. And when it's a bachelor's, I'm like, oh, I've done my bachelor's, now it's got my master's. You can't.
Yeah, because everywhere, even now, there is a reformation now, and when I entered the university, I started, so we studied 4 years for bachelor's degrees, 1 master's. Yes.
Well, first try to
But everything you know to receive in these 4 years. In that last year, there were just formal courses. I don't even know why they could be somewhere absolutely in that 4 years.
So, I'm going to go ahead and apply
And in the technical university, they study 5 years for a bachelor's degree, and then 1 more year for master's.
Oh wow, that's super long.
Like doctors.
Yeah.
use any gas or electric. Find a spot. You carry on working?
Well, at the moment I am.
Just because you're sick of it, or you
It's just there is often days I think I don't want to spend
How are you finding
It's amazing.
because it's not like
I didn't expect
you didn't enjoy it.
I wanted photos.
Yeah.
I go in there, but I didn't believe it could be something. Because in our country, if town is small, it is underdeveloped. Because especially in those regions where I am from, there was a big USSR, it stopped, and the industry, many industrial, many plants and factories, and they lost their sense and they closed. And if there is a plant or factory, there is a town around it, and that people lost their jobs, and now these cities are something horrible.
really?
And the only place in all region is Donetsk, which seems at least somehow developed. And if you drive out of its borders, anything to happen, even before all that stuff with Russia.
when you leave your place for the first time, you are
Yeah, you don't really have the
two great tellies.
Best telly in the world.
Quite a lot of very small, but really good.
Yeah, and countryside in Ukraine, maybe the western part, it looks somehow attractive, but you know, to the east,
Yes, I'm
the west, attractive it seems.
Wait, what did you say?
People, I don't know how could it be, but it is a common fact that it is not profitable
When are we supposed to be doing the next thing?
to do agriculture. I don't know how can it be, because you can grow wheat or grow beef,
Who's your mentor?
but it's not profitable. The potato from Egypt is cheaper than those we grow locally. I don't know how you can do it.
Serious programs.
So would you have
like casual reading and
drop
stuff?
No, in the western part there are woods and mountains, but Donetsk region it is famous for its steppe. It's the steppe. Yes, just yes, plain surfaces, only terracotta. People usually don't enjoy when they see terracotta because everybody who is from even other cities, they said, I thought that this terracotta is maybe over 9 building height, but when they see mountains, real mountains of kilometers in wide and several hundred meters in height, they say, how could people do that?
Or just one. Or look down at the floor all the time. That's why. And then occasionally look up. Yeah, basically send it through.
That's not a bad idea. It's probably, is it going to be one of those free Steam games?
Yeah, you think it's a game to be free on there, and it sounds like
It's terrible.
You can help me with that. It's a game that you can play a lot. I mean, if it's only going to be unless you can play it online and it keeps the full screen split. There's a game coming out, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a Call of Duty shooter, but all the players are invisible to each other, so you have to screen watch to work out where people are to win the game. Yeah,
Because I mean, you should just screen watch one.
Tony as well didn't bring his Wii with me. We can't play doubles. I thought, well, now all the games that we used to play, that'd be good fun. So we didn't bring the Wii.
Yeah, they try to understand how to put them in the machine and how all this brings. That was pretty interesting to do.
I can first time I came across was analysis and chemistry.
So what are you aiming at trying to convince Mom to play first? Ticket to Ride? I suppose that's a bit more straightforward than no, especially Catan with expansion.
You don't want to play with You don't want to play
No. You could play it as like one very basic game just to get the principle of it. But I mean, Cities and Knights is safe. It would easily confuse people, especially like you won't know the game as well, and the different strategies that will be relevant to it. Have you seen the Alex and Sam? I want to make a pretty sky advert.
No, but I've seen the David Cameron one where he's like, we will never get back together.
Yeah. Maybe one with him stitching together on the wall.
I'm pretty sure they're expecting. I haven't read too much yet. I've read about basically like the synopsis of what I've been doing for 6 months. I haven't looked at the term. Yeah, just I think they're not expecting me to. I guess I'm not seeing that. Maybe I'll just walk in and tell them what I know and just say, nah, it's not complete. But, you know, let's try. Maybe next week. I was like, things just new. So I just really I identified the actual like biology as well. I didn't get any. I don't know anything around that. Yes, I can I did physics, I'd be probably learning in a week. Maybe that did make it very popular. That's why I've done physics. It's microfluidics. Nothing to do with anything. It's a nice experience though. Something to do with what you're doing. Maybe. Rather message. You think you've got it back?
Yeah, with Ben we're doing like a bit of a phase.
Yeah.
This year we're going to be
this project, no one knows what it's going to be about, but we haven't been told really yet. So it's like, we don't know, it's one of those similarities which is enough to know.
You have like
no, I mean, I've done the little bit.
I'm hoping by this time next week that someone will have told me. I've got the oh, that's on the sort of on the make like a layer thing.
Really hard. I think part of research is just so many like you have to pay for this one.
It's a program. I may as well just give it. I know I've got a program on my computer. Yeah, once you do that, all the papers are coming through. Because like, you know, that's consuming one. And magnetic.
I think I'm just going to keep looking, and I found a link to it for free.
I don't know how people actually really
You make some really good.
Just initiative where all
Yeah.
the papers are green.
Mobile devices.
Because it's supposed to be for anyone to learn. If they're interested, they can read it.
Yesterday, but I wasn't entirely sure.
Like the first test. The first one's sort of in start making sense. 5 people being engineering, you know. 5 people being engineering, you don't worry about them.
Yes, because
It looks like they didn't have as much of a dedicated workspace.
Because I think that's why
Yeah.
They didn't get it. Have a lot more dedicated workspace.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, we've got a lot of space actually.
Yeah. Except you can't get feedback.
Trip to IKEA.
Brilliant, like, just like you were from the board, like here, PhD feedback.
Google.
Just a big empty like wall, a room.
It looks like ball pit.
Yeah. They've done here all these kind of whiteboards. They're called like all the way around.
those guys where I studied, they had a visa. 6 years.
They had one massive light on windows, and they see like we see like the cleaners coming back.
So it looks like we did that first year in France. We used the windows to like water that opening. Yeah, or like during the physics homework, we do the integrals on the windows. You see people walk past like, what are they doing? Turn around to clean your stuff up a bit mad. Do you live in Hall? Oh, okay, not far at all. Oh yeah, you were saying yesterday that you probably live in quite fair. How about you? Okay, yeah. That's down there, isn't it? By the picture house. Yeah. Some idea what that is then. We found out we didn't find a house until the beginning of August. People looked too late. Nightmare.
Like I said, my tennis team got it for a few days before I did.
It's nice though.
It's really nice. Everything's white and pretty and shiny. But there's no toaster or microwave. Just the shelves and my door doesn't.
So we had to break into a chemistry building.
Things like that.
There's like a socket, but there's no cable.
So that, are they still like setting up? I think it's new this year.
New this year?
I know there's like a load of like new blocks this year. There's one in the centre of town. I know print work was just last year. Yeah, and basically we were looking at it and it's like it was open. I think for like a 4-bedroom, it was like £150 a week. Best value, like two. So we found a 4-bedroom house that I think about about 300 a month. That's say nicer, or probably well, not as nice in terms of facilities, but it's best location. It's just us.
Is there something else?
Finding people in and like all that.
Yeah, and also the thing with the work one in town is it's right next to the main student club, like the walls are next to each other. So, well, if you want to go out, then it's fine, but
Don't need to worry about getting home tonight.
roll out. But at the same time, if you've got sharing a wall, then you're not going to be able to sleep until like 2.
Even like last night, you hear everyone kind of shouting outside and stuff. And
Maybe the workshop.
I think it took about 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think this week is precious, so it's gonna well, it's gonna be the I suppose from where it is, it's not
So transition
far from up to campus. It's really like 5-10. Although you have to steep slightly.
Yeah, I do.
How do you, yeah, have you done
I was following a wee map and it's basically cuts the about as far away as I was.
What do they do?
I think the hill side that you'll be walking up is cardiac hill. Because someone apparently had a heart attack walking up it once.
To what end is your project?
So that would be fun.
I feel so bad now about being out of breath.
Okay, so they all come in.
Yeah. Pretty alright.
We're right down yeah, we're about 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on how quickly you walk. Like 2 or 3 minutes further on than where we were last year, so it's the same area. The most sort of general student area is over that one somewhere, past the football stadium, the Pinho area, or Pinho Road area. But they all students do it all around by like January. I suppose the thing as well is like, I was quite lucky that I knew people coming here that we could look for like 4 bedrooms, but say for you, you have to look for a single bedroom in a house with people you don't know or...
You don't have to go anywhere, like you can sit with the computer, sit the material on the ground. I guess so. When you have but you
can't as well, because you don't know
do it after the
who you'd be living with.
then you have to do it within your time so that can include
mum in the house is lovely, the general
Really say how you know. So the picture house sort of individual rooms and then like a communal kitchen.
We
where you can
three
show
people
what you have learned in there.
Came back afterwards and met the other girls on the other side of me. And kind of like I've been with her, yeah, see you later kind of thing. And apparently he didn't like the shit.
Maybe. Or maybe we have 2.
People don't like being paid.
Yeah. Sometimes with the Pinho Road area you don't get a very big kitchen. We've been quite lucky with ours. We've got the kitchen's really small, it's got quite a good meeting room. Like last year we did the kitchen, lounge, so we all have to sit, and then it was a 6-bedroom house, but only like seats for 5. So that was always a bit to move out some chairs from the bedrooms, but
obviously like last year we just had as in for 3 years, this seems really good. Like kind of a sense of parents, but we nearly always sat and it's like probably where people that do socialise more
I really wish I
don't
was
really
still
fit in many people, but they do have like a big lounge downstairs as well.
Oh, like shared between the flats. Yeah, I think the other ones of that sort of style do that.
It's got like a cinema, a games room, and
And I suppose you're only just around the corner from the picture house this morning. And then the end of town. Well, at the end of the high street in that area.
yeah, just like pictures, vegetable shop, and Tesco's right underneath.
Everything
Yeah, kind of within
Roy gave me a little punch on the arm.
I heard he yells at us. And it was just warning that you're going to get.
Sounds like we're going to be quite busy here.
I'll see my mentor.
Yeah, we'll be able to do clubs every night.
I was waiting for that.
Because in first year you could buy yearly membership for like £4. Because most people say do the 3-year bachelor's, you can get a lifetime membership for like 10. But now it's going to last for 4 years. So it's pretty good value. So I need to at least go to pick up. If you go to them freshers there and sign up, you'll see, not that we're probably never going to use it, but you get a card for one of the clubs that gives you like discounts on every night. That it might be free entry, like £1 entry or £1 drink, and you get that with the membership. There's something for like every day. I mean, if there was a group going down to the Bishop Social, it'd be worth doing probably. Just even, I think it's Thursday. I'm not sure what they're doing. I think they're selling tickets for freshers, but if not, you have to get either buy a ticket online, which